this week. She's a Welsh singer made famous through hits like Total Eclipse of the Heart and Holding Out for a Hero. The latter song is featured prominently in the movie Shrek 2. Now, at face value, Shrek is a film about a princess who, against all odds, falls in love with an ogre who is from a swamp which lies far beyond the walls of the kingdom of far, far away. At face value, it's a story about adventure, a little bit of deceit, and ultimately triumph. But on a deeper level, I think that Shrek is actually about moving beyond assumptions and biases. It's a story about allowing ourselves to imagine that something good can come from places that we have long written off. It's a story that asks us whether we are curious about ourselves, about one another, and about the stories that we might carry and hold. Can we imagine a world where the question, "Where are you from?" is filled with more curiosity rather than an effort to simply confirm our own assumptions or biases? Think again to the story for all ages. When I asked where folks were from, all of us thought of a location, a place. There were other things that we left out that might also tell people a little bit more about where we are from, and yet our default answer has been the location of our birth or where we grew up, the first place we remember having a home. Throughout our sermon this morning, I hope that you might dare to imagine what else you might say in response to that question, where are you from? Indeed, this story, the Old Testament text this morning, is the beginning of the second story of creation found in Genesis. And it's worth noting, I think, we won't go into it today, but the other books of the Bible, many of them also include other stories of creation. So there's not just Genesis 1, there's not just Genesis 2. We see at least 5 to 7 other stories of creation pop up in our sacred texts. All of them an effort to explain who we are, where we come from, how we got here, and that might help us consider where, in fact, we might ultimately be going. Without going too far into untangling the differences between the first and second stories, a few things are notable about the part of the story that Marley read for us this morning. First, the God of this story is called Yahweh. And this God, Yahweh God, appears to be something like a potter. In some of my prayers, you've heard me utter the phrase potter of creation. I get that language from this story of creation, this story of a God who has a very different relationship with creation than we find in the first story of Genesis. This God, Yahweh God, has a relationship that's indicative of a more almost literally hands-on approach to creation. Yahweh crafts Adam out of Adamah, or earth. And then Yahweh breathes life into that creation, and Adam is no longer just earth, but now human. Flesh and bones, soul and substance, you and I. I think the idea of a God who works with their hands is striking. This is different than the God we first meet in Genesis in that first story of creation, because that God sees a world in chaos and asks, how can I bring order to things that seem to trouble me? That God, Elohim, just speaks things into existence. Let there be light, and there is light. Let there be creatures of the sea and of the land, and there are creatures of the sea and of the land. Elohim God speaks things into existence. Yahweh God makes things with their hands, like a potter, fashions all of life out of the dust of the earth and the stars of the sky. This God seems to really connect with the Emmanuel, the idea of God with us, God a part of our story, God an active aspect of our earthly lives. This story that Marley read for us this morning from Genesis offers each of us the reality that we might share a common ancestral home. The dust of the earth, the stars of the sky, the hands and very breath of God. Imagine how different our stories might be if we answered the question, "Where are you from?" with something like that as our truth. There are a lot of folks who might look at you a little crazy if you said something like that in response to them. It's a weird answer, and yet it's an answer that I think invites curiosity, invites wonder, and invites more questions, offering us more opportunities to grow and share in relationship with one another. The easy answer to "where are you from" is to simply say a location, time, and context bound. The harder answer is to create space for new questions, new relationships, something different to form between you and the person asking that question, or the person you're asking the question to. Now, our gospel reading takes a slightly different turn this morning because we encounter the calling of Philip and Nathanael as disciples. And it's an interesting setup because folks had already heard a little bit about this Jesus guy. And there were many who already called him rabbi or teacher. But that title doesn't fully capture who Jesus is, not just yet. Indeed, when Philip told Nathanael about Jesus, he went further than offering that he was just a teacher. What Philip said to Nathanael suggested that Jesus of Nazareth was the one foretold by Moses and the other prophets of old. Now, Nathanael has an interesting moment of pause, a bit of hesitation, not because of Jesus' name, not because of the declaration that he might be who the prophets had foretold. No, Nathanael's pause comes because Jesus is from Nazareth. And the general thought about Nazareth at this time, Nazareth meaning sprout or shoot, is that nothing really big can come from there. It's a little rural, a little run down, a little out away from city centers, away from those places that we might otherwise consider holding something imposing, magnificent, or good. And so what Nathanael asks is a question: can anything good come from Nazareth? Here's the really interesting thing about Nathanael. We learn this in the very first thing that Jesus says about him. Nathanael is a good dude, arguably as good as they might come. When Jesus meets him for the very first time, he says, "Here is one in whom there is no deceit." There is nothing wrong with this guy. He shows up as his full, alive, fully breathing self. And Jesus sees him, acknowledges him, and knows him as someone who is good. And yet all the same, Nathanael still has this moment of bias, still has this moment of prejudice, still has this moment where he doubts the visions and prophecies of old. Yes, my siblings, I think it's true that even good and well-meaning people can have our thoughts and judgments clouded by bias and prejudice that we might not even know we have. Our series for the next few weeks is an invitation into that kind of recognition, that kind of acknowledgement, that kind of discomfort, hoping that something might emerge anew. Some of you know a few months ago I spent my fall vacation in Western Europe, and I was adamant that I would see Westminster Abbey. And then I was stunned at the price to get in. There's something weird about these European churches. They make you pay to walk through the door. But there's a secret. Tell them that you are there for communion, and suddenly the doors are wide open. You can come in for free because they will not charge you to participate in religious services. And so there I sat in Westminster Abbey waiting to receive communion. As about 40 of us settled into our seats, most of us tourists, we had a common conversation. Where are you from? How did you get here today? Why did you choose this, of all things to do on your vacation, to receive communion in a church that isn't your own, from a priest whom you don't know and will probably never see again? Where did you come from? Why are you here? We all answered that question. We chatted a bit about the weather and things that people might know about our specific locations. But minutes later, our answers to that question no longer really mattered. The priest offered the words of institution. We all moved towards the front of the sanctuary, knelt on the same bench, took the same bread, and then quite literally drank from the same exact cup. It did not matter so much where we came from, rather that we had all been called to the same place, carrying the same belief that by arriving at that table we could be reminded of and perhaps reconnect to our shared and common origin, the dust of the earth, the stars of the sky, the hands and very breath of God, that we might be a people called by God to live this life together, to share in a common lot, work towards a common goal, and maybe, just maybe, find the ability to begin building a more just world for all. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Can anything good come from the dust? Can anything good come from the places where all of us might be from, whether that's DeKalb County or Gwinnett, whether that's somewhere in Iowa or the Bronx, the shores of Maryland or Nova Scotia, from way out west too? Can anything good come from these places that we have all called and know as our home? The good news of this story is that the answer is absolutely yes. Good things come from Nazareth. Good things come from the dust. Good things come no matter where we are from. Good things come from there because we have come from there. We have been called from there. In the story that Marley read, the gospel text this morning, something else happens. When Nathanael presents his doubt and hesitation, Jesus says, "Come and see." Now that sounds a little different for us than it does in the Hebrew text, because in that text, come and see is more along the lines of come and be known. Come and let us know each other. So that hesitation, that doubt about where someone might be from, about what someone might carry with them from their place of origin, the invitation that Christ offers is not sit in that hesitation. It's not sit in that pause. It's simply come. Come and be known. Come and let us know one another a little bit more deeply, and perhaps in that we can shed our bias, shed our prejudice, shed our assumptions, and enter into a new kind of relationship, looking more fully, more freely, and more intentionally upon one another in our common shared origin, believing that because we come from the dust of the earth and the breath of God, that we have a whole lot more in common than we might initially believe. That because we came from the breath of God, we might, maybe, truly, hold within us the ability to have a deeper relationship than the one the world often presents as choices that we have for one another. Imagine for a moment that we approached all people in this room, because we don't all know each other just yet. We might know names and faces, but we don't know all the stories. We don't know all the things we carry with us into this place. There are strangers we meet every single day, too, who we might ask, "Where are you from? How did you get here?" All that an effort to understand something. But imagine if we went just a little bit deeper. If we were open to something different than just trying to fill in the gaps and categorize people and things, but instead we're a bit more intentional, a bit more curious. What if we were willing to offer something different in response to the question, "Where are you from?" Imagine sharing more about who and how you got here. Being open to that kind of experience, being intentional about that kind of response and expecting an answer like that, it brings all of us into a different place, such that perhaps our answer to "Where are you from?" is no longer just Lawrenceville or Atlanta, but it might include things about the people that helped bring us here too. Perhaps in response to saying, "Where are you from?" we might say, "I'm from the hands of a homemaker and a tobacco and tomato farmer, the hands of a social worker and a drug treatment counselor, grandparents and parents there. Yes, I'm from the dust of the earth and the stars of the sky too. I am from all the people and places that have brought me from there to here, brought you and I together now." All of those things forming some part of our story, all of those answers creating an opening for a different kind of conversation, one that doesn't just end with the stated location, but invites us into a different kind of storytelling. a different kind of relationship, a different kind of being with one another. That's the good news of this story, is that Christ invites us to share in life together. We can't do that without being more curious. We can't do that without being open to different kinds of answers. We can't do that without imagining how different this life could be if only we took 1 second more to ask a follow-up question. To say, oh, you said something interesting there. Tell me more about this. If we did not accept the first response we got, and instead we're open enough, comfortable enough, courageous enough to probe a little bit deeper, a bit more intentionally, a bit more openly, for the chance to experience more curiosity, for the chance to know more of God's creation more fully, more freely, and in the way that God intended. We were made for relationship. We were made to see and find the good in one another. Asking the question, where are you from, can sometimes be the very first step in unearthing something new about us all. And so my prayer for you this day and the week ahead is that you might find in yourself the courage and the grace to risk looking a little silly, a little foolish, a little weird, and when someone asks, where are you from, when you're curious about someone's origin, to offer a different kind of answer, one that invites more questions, one that allows you the space to offer more stories, one that sounds as crazy, but also, I hope, freeing, as saying, I am from the dust of the earth and the stars of the sky. Amen.